What if I told you that the greatest achievement in television history was not making people laugh? What if I told you it was not making people cry either? What if I told you that the most important show ever made somehow did both at the exact same time, forcing an entire nation to look at itself honestly while still finding reasons to smile? Yo, listen. That is not an easy thing to do. Making people laugh is difficult. Making people cry is difficult. Making millions of people do both while also making them think about their country, their families, their beliefs, and themselves. That is almost impossible. And yet somehow, All in the Family accomplished it. Today we are talking about the show that made America look in the mirror and laugh and cry. And trust me, this may be the deepest reason why All in the Family remains one of the most important television shows ever created. Welcome back. If you love classic television, if you appreciate cultural history, and if you enjoy exploring why certain shows transcend entertainment and become part of a nation's identity, then you are absolutely in the right place. Because today we are diving into the emotional heart of Norman Lear's masterpiece. And honestly, here is my first hot take. I do not think All in the Family became legendary because it was funny. I think it became legendary because it was truthful. The comedy mattered. Of course it did. The performances mattered. The writing mattered. Everything mattered. But underneath all of that was something even more powerful. Truth. And trust me, audiences recognize truth when they see it. Now let us go back to January 12th, 1971. When All in the Family premiered on CBS, television was filled with shows that entertained audiences. Some were wonderful. Some were beloved. Some remain classics today. But very few forced viewers to confront themselves. Very few held up a mirror. Very few said, "This is who we are. This is how we talk. This is how we argue. This is how we love. This is how we fail. This is how we struggle." Norman Lear wanted television to reflect real life. Not a polished version. Not an idealized version. The real thing. And honestly, that decision changed television forever. Now here is a major hot take. Archie Bunker may be the most important mirror ever placed on American television. Seriously. Think about it. When viewers watched Archie, they were not simply watching a character. Many were recognizing somebody they knew. A father, an uncle, a grandfather, a neighbor, maybe even themselves. That recognition created something powerful. Because people laugh differently when they recognize reality. The laughter becomes personal. The laughter becomes revealing. The laughter becomes uncomfortable sometimes. And trust me, All in the Family understood that perfectly. His performance remains extraordinary because he never played Archie as a joke. He played him as a human being. A complicated human being. A flawed human being. A human being trying to make sense of a rapidly changing world. That complexity transformed Archie from a sitcom character into a cultural mirror. And honestly, America could not stop looking. Check this out. One of the most remarkable things about All in the Family is that different viewers saw different reflections. Some viewers looked at Archie and saw everything wrong with America. Others looked at Archie and saw everything they believed was being lost. Some viewers sided with Michael. Others sided with Archie. Some shifted back and forth depending on the episode. Now here is another hot take. That ambiguity is one of the greatest strengths in television history. Most shows tell viewers what to think. All in the Family often invited viewers to think for themselves. That invitation created engagement, and engagement created impact. One thing I love about the series is how it turned ordinary family arguments into national conversations. Think about the Bunker household. On the surface, it is just a family. A father, a mother, a daughter, a son-in-law. But underneath that simple structure lies something much bigger. America itself. Generational conflict. Political conflict. Social conflict. Cultural conflict. Everything happening across the country eventually found its way into that living room. And honestly, that living room became one of the most important spaces in television history. Now let us talk about laughter. Because here is another hot take. The laughter in All in the Family was never merely entertainment. It was revelation. Seriously. Think about how many times viewers laughed before realizing something deeper was happening. A joke would land. The audience would laugh. Then suddenly, they would recognize a truth hidden beneath the humor. Norman Lear understood that comedy lowers defenses. Comedy opens doors. Comedy creates opportunities for reflection. And trust me, he used that power brilliantly. The famous Sammy Davis episode is a perfect example. Even people who have never watched the series often know the iconic image. Sammy Davis kissing Archie Bunker on the cheek. It is funny, unexpected, memorable, but it is also something more. A moment that challenges assumptions. A moment that exposes attitudes. A moment that encourages viewers to reconsider perspectives. That combination of humor and insight became one of the show's trademarks. Now here is another major hot take. Gene's Bunker is the reason the show could make people cry. Seriously. Archie may have generated the debates. Michael may have generated the arguments. But generated the heart. Gene delivered one of the greatest performances in television history. And honestly, I do not think she receives enough credit for it. Brought compassion into a world filled with conflict. She brought empathy into arguments. She brought humanity into ideology. She reminded viewers that beneath every disagreement exists a person. That emotional perspective made the show incredibly powerful. One thing that separates All in the Family from many other sitcoms is its willingness to embrace sadness when necessary. Most comedies run away from pain. All in the Family often walked directly toward it. Now here is another hot take. I think the assault episode remains one of the bravest stories ever told in a sitcom. Not because it was controversial, because it was honest. Gene's performance is extraordinary. The emotional reality feels authentic. The story reminds viewers that life contains moments that cannot be solved with a punchline. That willingness to acknowledge pain gave the series emotional depth few sitcoms have ever matched. And honestly, that is where the crying comes from. Not manipulation, not sentimentality. The truth. Viewers cry because they recognize something real, something human, something familiar. Another fascinating aspect of the show is how it captured America during a period of enormous change. The Civil Rights Movement, the Vietnam War, women's liberation, economic uncertainty, political division. All of these forces appear throughout the series. Now here is another hot take. I think All in the Family may be the greatest cultural time capsule ever created. Seriously, watching the show today feels like opening a window into the emotional life of 1970s America. Not just the events, the feelings, the fears, the hopes, the frustrations, the confusion, the humanity. Very few television programs preserve a moment in history so effectively. And honestly, that historical value grows more important every year. One thing Norman Lear understood better than almost anyone was that audiences do not connect with issues. They connect with people. That insight explains why the show remains so powerful. Race matters because people matter. Politics matters because people matter. Social change matters because people matter. Everything ultimately returns to human relationships. And trust me, All in the Family never lost sight of that. Now let me give you perhaps my biggest hot take. I think the reason the show still resonates more than 50 years later is because the mirror still works. Seriously, the specific issues may change. The technology may change. The language may change. But the fundamental questions remain. How do families survive disagreement? How do people adapt to change? How do individuals balance tradition and progress? How do we remain connected during periods of division? Those questions are just as relevant today as they were in 1971. Maybe even more relevant. That is why new audiences continue discovering the series. The mirror still reflects something recognizable. And honestly, that is remarkable. The ratings certainly reflected the show's impact. 5 consecutive seasons as the #1 show in America. 4 consecutive Emmy Awards for Outstanding Comedy Series. Massive cultural influence. Groundbreaking spin-offs like The and Good Times. But honestly, numbers only tell part of the story. The real achievement was emotional. The real achievement was cultural. The real achievement was helping a nation understand itself. For me, the final verdict is simple. All in the Family became one of the greatest television shows ever created because it accomplished something almost impossible. It made America laugh at itself. It made America cry for itself. And while viewers were laughing and crying, it quietly encouraged them to think about who they were, who they wanted to be, and what kind of country they were building together. That is not just entertainment. That is cultural significance. That is television at its highest level. And honestly, very few shows have ever come close. So what do you think? Was All in the Family the greatest mirror American television has ever held up to society? and which moment from the series made you laugh and think at the same time. Let me know in the comments because I genuinely want to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of television's most profound achievements, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this video with fellow classic television fans. More All in the Family content is coming soon, and trust me, you do not want to miss it.